Good evening. I just want to provide some context about the environment that you all are living in and the environment that we're asking our responders to work in, and that has to do with tree mortality. Roll the footage back to the spring. We had some special planes with special cameras. We call them aerial detection flights. They look for dead trees. Statewide, they found 66 million dead trees, predominantly in the Sierra Nevadas. On the Sequoia alone, 7 million trees on 490,000 acres. Now, this forest is 1.1 million acres. So that's better than 40% of this forest is dead as far as trees. We're talking about 3,000 to 6,000 and 7,000 foot elevation. Certainly the pine belt and even the fir. Well, why? Well, I'll give you 3 reasons. The first, this just in, we're in a drought. We're in the 5th year of a drought. And just like you and I, trees are actually real similar to you and I. When we're healthy, we can take a cold now and then. Sure, we get a cold. A couple days, 3 days, and bounce right back. But one cold after another, and then you combine that with a flu and then something else that's viral, et cetera, you just flat get worn down, and then you can't fight it off. And so these trees are kind of the same way. After 5 years, they're pretty darn dry and weak. Now these bugs, the insects, the pine beetle is what's hitting the pine, and the fir engraver beetle is what's hitting the fir. Now all the cedar that you're seeing that's dying, well, that's directly related to the drought, far less so than beetles. But those beetles, they're native here. They've been there all along, but they've just been waiting for the picnic. And so now, with 5 years of drought, they've got quite a picnic to start munching on, and they've been doing their job. 7 million, 490,000 acres. I told you there are 3 reasons. The second reason, I own. My agency owns. Roll the footage back even further. Our policy regarding fire suppression was fire is bad, pure and simple. When fire starts, by 10 a.m. that next shift, that thing better be out, pure and simple. Okay, sounds good. That said, in a, quote, more natural setting, what happens? Well, trees grow, parts of trees, entire trees die, those limbs, the whole trees, they fall down, and periodically, when those lightning strikes, it cleans it up. But if I suppress every single one of those, I don't allow fire to do its more natural job. And so all that fuel builds and builds and builds. Then when the lightning strikes that area, poof, he says. A large-scale fire ensues. And so we've learned, we're a learning organization. And so we're doing a better job of trying to increase the pace and scale of ecological restoration, trying to make our landscapes much more resilient to large-scale fire, the effects of weather and climate, and insects and disease. That third part, we're a national forest. We're not a national park. I have national park friends, and this the beauty of this country, we have national parks and national forests, but they are very different. They're very different by design. Congress and us got together and said that, we think there are places that ought to have more of a preservation focus. And so when you look at a national park that's administered by the National Park Service within the Department of the Interior, their mission by Congress is still, yes indeed, for the benefit and enjoyment of the people and unimpaired for future generations. So therefore, their management paradigm, if you will, is about natural regulation. Whatever nature gives them, that's what they deal with. Okay? It's not right or wrong. It's different. It's what Congress said would be the mission for areas that are called national parks. Well, we also decided that, we think that we ought to also reserve from the public domain and have areas that have a much more use aspect. And so national forests were created by Congress with the mission of sustaining the health, diversity, and productivity of our nation's forests and grasslands for current and future generations. Where our management paradigm is, who remembers the old signs? There's probably a few around. Multiple use, a land of many uses. Right or wrong? No, they're two different systems. But my job has to do with managing national forests. Well, another this just in. You'll want to write this down. There are folks who have a fundamental values conflict in me being a multiple-use agency. They would much rather see the Sequoia National Forest managed as if it were the Sequoia National Park. Perfectly get that. If that's your value system, that's your value set. I can't take that away from you. However, until Congress changes its mind and changes the law, I'm still a multiple-use agency. Okay? So some setting. Well, Elliot, what are you doing about it? Well, here's what we're doing about it. We've aligned with the governor and his statewide tree mortality task force. We've aligned with Tulare County, for example, has their own tree mortality task force. And we've aligned our interests in trying to focus our efforts on dealing with the tree mortality. But my goodness, 490,000 acres? That's not going to happen tomorrow. That's not going to happen anytime soon. And so what do you do when you have limited resources? You prioritize. You do triage. And that's just what we've done. District Ranger Watson and the rest of our forest leadership team, Brent Skaggs, who's our forest fire management officer, we've sat down and we've said, again, consistent with the governor, aligning or consistent with the governor's task force and the various local government task force, we're focusing on those high hazard areas. We're putting our energies there first. Why? Because of safety. That's where you live. And so where we've been dropping trees is in the high hazard areas, which means campgrounds, roads, trails, power line corridors. We've been working with PG&E and SCE, depending on what part of the forest you're in and which one has the corridor. Administrative sites, summer home tracks, etc. And even before the fire season, we were smart enough to remember that all those firefighters that start coming on board, and on this forest, how many of them are actually permit year-round? It's like, thinking that now might be a good time to do some additional training with those chainsaws. And so even before it got real heavy into fire season, if you will, we had our own folks, plus we had folks actually from Mr. Minton's forest. We had hotshot crews from the Six Rivers. We had, I think, the Klamath and Plumas. We had hotshot crews coming from outside this forest coming here to help you all. So far, I've dropped 25,000 trees and about 10,000 acres. It's only a dent in that 490. But if it's around your home, that's significant. And so we're going to continue that effort. Beyond that, we'll continue to propose projects for thinning and large scale. District Ranger Al Watson's been working for several months now on a project up at Summit. Many of you have probably been involved in some of those meetings, provided comments, etc. This fire's actually helped implement some of that. Went exactly the way we were intending to implement it. And then further up the hill, District Ranger Eric LaPrice, from the Western Divide District at Tobias, he's been working on a restoration project. We've had several projects, you're familiar with them here, even on this district. And as soon as we propose them, again, the folks that have a fundamental values conflict with us being a multi-use agency, they have the right to object. They have a right to sue us. And they do. And so then that delays or even postpones, or the project doesn't even get implemented. And so, again, I would contend that there's three different factors to creating the environment that you all are living in and that we're asking our responders to move into. But I just want to provide some context about this environment and tree mortality. And so thank you.